8 presidents of the United States have died in office. 4 were shot by assassins. 4 were taken by illness. And in almost every single case, there's more to the story than what most people learned in school. This is the full account of how American presidents have died, from medical malpractice that likely killed the very first president, to contaminated White House water that may have poisoned multiple commanders-in-chief, to a curse that seemed to stalk every president elected in a year ending in 0. Let's start at the very beginning, with George Washington. After spending hours in cold, wet weather, Washington fell ill and made what turned out to be a fatal decision. He ordered his doctor to drain 1 pint of blood from his body. As his condition worsened, his doctors didn't reconsider. They doubled down, draining 4 more pints in an attempt to cure him. The average human body contains between 8 and 12 pints of blood, which means they removed roughly half of his. Washington died within 2 days of his first symptoms appearing, and many historians believe the bloodletting actually killed him, not the illness itself. But Washington at least died at home in retirement. The far stranger deaths are the ones that happened inside the White House. William Henry Harrison holds a record no president wants. He died on April 4, 1841, exactly 1 month after taking the oath of office. For generations, the story was simple. He gave a long inaugural address in the cold rain without a coat, caught pneumonia, and died. Except that's probably not what happened. A 2014 analysis published in the New York Times made a compelling case that Harrison actually died of enteric fever, which is essentially typhoid. And the source? The White House water supply. Here's what people don't realize about Washington, D.C. in 1841. The nation's capital had no sewer system. Sewage from nearby buildings simply flowed into public grounds a short distance from the White House, where it stagnated and formed a marsh. The White House water supply was situated directly below a depository for human waste. Harrison developed severe gastroenteritis, and as he lay dying, he had a sinking pulse and cold, blue extremities, which are 2 classic signs of septic shock. His last words were directed at his vice president, though John Tyler wasn't actually in the room. "Sir, I wish you to understand the true principles of the government. I wish them carried out. I ask nothing more." Harrison wasn't the only victim of that contaminated water. Just 9 years later, President Zachary Taylor developed the same severe gastroenteritis while living in the White House. He died on July 9, 1850, 5 days after becoming ill. The suspicion of foul play was strong enough that Taylor's body was actually exhumed in 1991 and tested for arsenic poisoning. The results came back negative, but the more likely culprit was the same one that got Harrison: bad water flowing through the pipes of the most powerful house in the country. Now let's turn to the assassinations, because they tell us as much about medicine and security as they do about violence. Abraham Lincoln was shot on April 14, 1865, by John Wilkes Booth, an actor and Confederate sympathizer. Lincoln was watching a play called Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater with his wife Mary Todd when Booth entered the presidential box and fired a single bullet into the back of his head. Lincoln died 9 hours later, at 7:22 the next morning. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton reportedly said, "Now he belongs to the ages." Here's an incredible detail. On the very day he was assassinated, Lincoln signed the law creating the United States Secret Service. But the agency's original purpose wasn't to protect the president. It was to stop counterfeiters. Presidential protection wouldn't be added to its mission until 1901, after yet another president was gunned down. Lincoln had already survived 1 attempt on his life 9 months earlier, when a bullet passed through his signature stovepipe hat as he was riding to his summer cottage one evening. James Garfield was next, shot on July 2, 1881, by Charles Guiteau, a delusional man who believed he deserved an ambassadorship for his almost entirely imaginary role in Garfield's election. Garfield didn't die from the shooting. He lingered for 11 agonizing weeks before succumbing on September 19 at the age of 49. The actual cause of death was sepsis. His doctors repeatedly probed the wound with unwashed hands and unsterilized instruments, causing massive infection. Even Guiteau seemed to understand this. At his trial, he declared, "I did not kill the president. The doctors did that. I merely shot him." William McKinley was assassinated on September 6, 1901, at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York. He was shaking hands with the public when Leon Czolgosz, a Polish-American anarchist, shot him. McKinley died 8 days later from gangrene caused by the bullet wounds. Once again, inadequate medical treatment played a significant role. Then, there were the presidents who died of illness while in office. Warren G. Harding collapsed and died on August 2, 1923, in the presidential suite of San Francisco's Palace Hotel. His last words were mundane. His wife was reading to him from the Saturday Evening Post, and he said, "That's good, go on." Then he was gone. His wife Florence refused to allow an autopsy and had his body embalmed within an hour, which immediately sparked conspiracy theories. Some claimed Florence had poisoned him. A former administration member even published a book making that accusation. But Harding's medical records from his final trip show a man suffering from high blood pressure, chest pains, and respiratory issues. The medical consensus today is that he died of congestive heart failure. Franklin Roosevelt's death on April 12, 1945, revealed a web of secrets. FDR had been hiding the severity of his declining health from nearly everyone, including his own vice president, Harry Truman. By the end, he could only work 4 hours a day. That afternoon, an artist named Elizabeth Shumatoff was painting his portrait when Roosevelt suddenly said, "I have a terrific headache." He collapsed and was pronounced dead at 3:35 p.m. from a massive cerebral hemorrhage. The portrait was never finished, but the real shock came for Eleanor Roosevelt. When she learned of her husband's death, she also discovered that his former mistress, Lucy Mercer Rutherford, had been with him when he died, arranged by their own daughter, Anna. The last president to die in office was John F. Kennedy, assassinated on November 22, 1963, in Dallas, Texas. Lee Harvey Oswald fired 3 shots from a 6th-floor window of the Texas School Book Depository as the presidential motorcade passed through Dealey Plaza. Kennedy was struck twice, once in the neck and once in the head, and was pronounced dead 30 minutes later. He was 46 years old, making him the youngest president to die. Now, about that curse. Starting with Harrison in 1840, every single president elected in a year ending in 0 died in office. 1840, 1860, 1880, 1900, 1920, 1940, 1960. 7 in a row. It was called the Curse of Tippecanoe, named after Harrison's famous military victory. But Ronald Reagan, elected in 1980, survived an assassination attempt and lived to be 93. George W. Bush, elected in 2000, served 2 full terms unharmed. The curse, it seems, has been broken. The most recent presidential death was Jimmy Carter, who passed peacefully on December 29, 2024, at his home in Plains, Georgia, at the age of 100. He was the first president in American history to reach his 100th birthday, and he made sure he lived long enough to cast one final vote in the 2024 presidential election. From George Washington's bloodletting to contaminated White House water, from doctors who killed their patients to assassins who changed history, the deaths of American presidents tell us something profound. They remind us that the most powerful person in the world has always been, in the end, just as fragile as the rest of us.